If we're talking about a check, the acceptor usually inquires about the possibility or if the check has a fund to provide for the payment. So it usually inquire from the drawing bank if there is a fund intended to pay for this enough fund to pay for the payee, or if the check was legitimately issued. So that's the third the fourth parties, that's acceptor. Okay, we go now to the holder. The holder is a person who is in possession of a bearer instrument or an endorsee of an order instrument who is in possession thereof. A holder is the obligee, a person who can enforce payment of the instrument. Let's say, for example, a payee, of the earlier example that in a promissory note, the maker is Maria, the payee is Juana, but Juana had endorsed the promissory note or to Charis. So, Charis is the holder. If we're talking about the check, there's an endorsee there at the back of the check wherein the endorsee consigned as an endorsee or the next holder. So that is called, the holder is the obligee. A holder is not the payee, but eventually is the one who receives the payment in substitute of the previous payee. G. Referee in case of need is a person who may be designated in a part instrument of the person who may be resorted to by the parties in case of dispute. Okay. So that's it. We have already discussed the persons involved. If we're talking about negotiable instrument, do not be so intimidated, because it happens to me. The first time I had read negotiable instrument section 1, my head was reeling, because who is the maker, who's the drawer, who's the payee, who's the drawer? Because sometimes if we're discussing partially the negotiable instrument, you get confused of all the law. Actually is very repetitive. The next section actually discuss the same again and again. So that's why we have to study first section 1 piece by piece, so everybody could understand and could make the distinction of this promissory note from other notes. Okay. As a review, we go again to section 1, the form of negotiable instrument. A says, section 1, paragraph A, it says it must be in writing and signed by the maker or the drawer. We have already discussed who is the maker, who is the drawer. Again, maker is for the promissory note, drawer on the bill of exchange. It says it must be in writing, printed in ink or in pencil. It may be written in any material that substitute paper like cloth, leather, or parchment. As I have discussed in the previous discussion, in the initial discussion, it can be written, it can be engraved, it can be in 1/4 sheet of paper, it can be a very, very big check, but still, it is a negotiable instrument. When we're talking about signed, it may be in handwriting, it may be as a symbol as long it pertains to the one who the maker or the drawer. When we're talking about certainty, as I have said, the event must be certain, it must be determinable. So only death is the one that is certain. Conditions such as when I graduate law, when I finish my masteral, that is very conditional. It's a conditional. It is not certain. You might not finish your law, you cannot finish your masteral, so it is not a determinable future time. We go now to section 2. Certainty as to sum. What constitutes the sum? It is again section 2, as I had said, this is the repetition and what is discussed in section 1. The sum is a sum certain with the meaning of this act only to be paid with interest by stated installment. By stated installment with the provision that upon default in payment of any or interest above shall become due. We call this the acceleration clause, wherein failure to pay the subsequent installment you are to provide the payment if you cannot pay the first 2 installment. Otherwise you would be so this section 2 paragraph C, when it says by stated installment with the provision that upon default in payment of any installment or interest the whole shall become due, it is called acceleration clause. Failure to pay previous installment, meaning the obligee, the obligor is required to pay rather the whole amount. That's an acceleration clause. D, with exchange, whether at a fixed rate or at a current rate. We're talking about an exchange, foreign exchange, or there is a fixed rate, meaning a 20% or a 2%, or the current rate wherein the let's say for example, when you're talking about the legal rate of payment, diba? 6%. That's what they call the current rate. Section 2, paragraph E, with cost or collection or an attorney's fee in case of payment shall not be made at maturity. So you can state that with cost of collection or an attorney's fee, 20% attorney's fee or 10% attorney's fee. In case of default, it is still considered as sum certain. So this is just an additional provisions on your promissory note. Still, it is considered as a negotiable instrument. And still the sum is still certain. Even though there were interest, it was stated installment. There is an acceleration clause wherein you need to pay the whole amount. Failure for payment of previous installment, or if either the interest is there is a fixed rate or a current rate, prevailing rate, that still certain sum in a negotiable instrument according to section 2 paragraph D. Okay. We go now to section 3. Section 3 is again a repetition when this promise unconditional. An unqualified order or promise to pay is unconditional within the meaning of this act, though coupled with A. Indication a particular fund out which is reimbursement is to be made, or a particular account to be debited with the amount. Still, it's considered as negotiable instrument. Section 3, paragraph B, a statement of the transaction which gives rise to the instrument, but an order or promise to pay out of a particular fund is not unconditional. This one is a promise to pay within a particular fund is not unconditional. Later on, we have to discuss that, but then we're just on the initial discussion of section 1, 2, 3. We have to later on to discuss this further. Okay. We go now to section 4. Determinable future time. Again, I'm telling you, section 4 is just part of section 1. It is just repeating itself what is determinable future time and what it constitutes. An instrument is payable at a determinable future time when the meaning of this in act is first to be payable at a fixed rate after a date or site. It says that there is a date written or a site. It was when it was delivered, meaning when the payee had take hold of the promissory note and was able to see. That's the site. It's a fixed period after date or site. On or before a fixed or determinable future time is specified thereon. On or before a fixed or determinable future time, like I will pay you on Christmas time, on Valentine's, on what else, yung walang date pero determinable. Like say for example, as Wednesday is as a different date but it is a determinable future time. Diba? Because as Wednesday doesn't fall on the same date, but like for example, I will pay you on New Year's Day. New Year's Day falls actually on January 1, so the same date, but it is a determinable future time. On, we go now to section C. No, rather, section 4, paragraph C. On or at a fixed period after the occurrence of a specified event which is certain to happen through the time of happening be uncertain. Okay. At the fixed after the occurrence of a specified event which is certain to happen through the time of happening be uncertain. Specified event, like for example, there is an event that is not certain when to happen, but surely it will happen. Let's say for example, I will pay you when the let's say you're going to go to the NASA. If NASA would come back, or the rocket ship would come back after it was after it would reach the moon, it will come back, hopefully. So that is certain happen. It will happen, certainly, but we don't know when will it happen. That is what the section 4, paragraph C means when but this is very impractical, and whenever the debtor make that provisions on the promissory note, be sure you would not be able to be paid. I'm just be